Okay, the next garden that we're going to go to is the Woodland Garden. And this is the first garden that you actually come into when you're inside of our gates. And it's where we have the most wildlife. We have a lot of deer and occasionally we have elk. And the animals tend to feel like it's theirs because we're not up here very much. We tend to drive through it as we come in or when we leave. But it's the first indication of how it feels up here, and it's just a wonderful feeling, and I'll give you a tour. So my husband has really redone the sprinkler system up here, which was pretty intense. I think there were 16 or 17 zones, and what's kind of amazing is that when they initially built the house, which was in 1997, a lot of these sprinkler zones actually go way beyond. If you look, you can see where we have the division between the grass and the side bed. But the original landscaping plan is see this tree right here? Clear out there are sprinklers. So they must have had sprinkler systems all the way back out there, which are no longer in operation. But so this area up here is pretty expensive. It's a little bit less now. We have many less zones than they initially did, but aren't these pretty? Look at all these. And they just bloomed about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so they're kind of opening up and getting close to showing their show. But they're beautiful, and they come here every year. They're all over here, see them? And what's wonderful about the Woodland Garden, here's more of the snowbells, is that when I walk out here, I find little treasures and little surprises all the time. Little flowers. Way out here one day, I saw this bright blue blossom. It was a huge hydrangea that had just decided to bloom, so I walked through all the Again, it's pretty bare now, but once the spring comes, all these trees start getting beautiful leaves on them, so you really can't walk back in there. But last year we trimmed everything up. We made more of a defined bed up here. Some of these boxwoods that you see were originally by the front of the house. And up here I planted, I want to say 200 hostas, and that's what all these little markers are. They're hostas. That there's several varieties in here, and I'm trying to plant plants that will continue coming up year after year because it's a lot to maintain. Here's some animal prints. Lots of animal prints up here all the time. They love to walk up here. Like I said, I think they feel like it's their territory, which is fine with us. And the trees here are old and established and beautiful, just gorgeous. That looks like it's an oak leaf hydrangea that I transplanted. And what flower is amazing up here is the hellebores. Here it is, we're still in winter technically. And these hellebores just bloom all the time. And even though it's sunny and nice today, it's been freezing and cold and miserable and windy and rainy, and yet they still continue just to look beautiful. And there's a camellia I planted last year, and it's finally beginning to bloom. Its little red blossoms. And look how pretty the hellebore flowers are. They're just beautiful. They really are. And I planted I like to plant things in clusters. And what's kind of nice is there's a hose up here. So we did a little path. And sometimes I'll water in the summer, just water certain plants that need it because it does get pretty hot. And we put in this tree. It's a Japanese something or another. And I'm going to have labels made so everything has a label by it, so if people want to know what the plant is, they can just look at the tag. But this tree will get quite large and it's beautiful. I also try to plant native, and again, you can't see it, but there's a lot of stuff in here that's native, little plants that I started. Another camellia up there. And here's this hellebore. These hellebores have been here for years. They came with the house. I just love this woodland garden. It seems magical to me. And when everything is bloom and the leaves are on, it's all sorts of colors. You have your reds and your yellows and your greens, and it's just little bursts of color all over. Whoever did it really planned well. Even the trees that have fallen are still pretty, and a lot of times you'll see a trunk where the tree has fallen and just new branches are growing out of it. Nature really is amazing. I feel very small when I'm in this garden, which is fine. Everything is so large and beautiful. So if you stand right here, this is what you see when you come into our property. And we have a lot of moss in the lawn, which we are letting grow. If this lawn were to turn into one big piece of moss, we would be perfectly happy. We wouldn't have to mow it, and it's still beautiful and pretty. We do have a lot of gophers or voles up here, and it's kind of a constant battle. And this could be all from one mole, so you really have to take care of them before they get really out of hand. And I won't go into how we get rid of them, but we do. Dan's got it down now. This is an oak leaf hydrangea that I planted from the back patio, and it loves it here. It's very happy. And as I mentioned before, the boxwoods just do amazing. They're tough. They can grow in sun or shade. And you may not be able to tell now, but if you stand here, you can kind of see the definition between the lawn and the bed. And I'm slowly trying to plant things that will fill this bed up in a nice way, not too full, but there's a lot of space. And the sprinklers all water this area, which is pretty amazing. And one of the most unusual plants that we get up here are trilliums. I think they're native to the Pacific Northwest, I'm not positive, but every year that we've been here, at some point I'll come back here and there will be a beautiful trillium here. It comes back every year. And the trees are just beautiful. All the ferns growing. Here's a span. And this tree right here is one of the most unusual trees on the property. It's called a Divinia, and the common name is handkerchief tree. And the leaves are beautiful, but the little blossoms on there look like handkerchiefs blowing. And I've videotaped this many times where they gently blow in the wind. Very unusual. And that pretty much encompasses the Woodland Garden.